You are listening to the Obstructed View Red Sox podcast, presented by Beyond the Monster.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's a new episode of the Obstructed View Red Sox podcast. We are going to do a special Rule 5 draft Red Sox recap. It's myself joined by To The Show We Go host and fellow Woo Sox. Helps me cover the Woo Sox down in Polo Park, Andrew Parker.
Yeah, Chris, been a very, very long and exciting day. So this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, I don't know why it was so difficult for me to add that Woo Sox part in there. Maybe it's just because it's been a long last couple hours between recording with Chad Tracy. Check out that episode of the To The Show We Go featuring Woo Sox skipper Chad Tracy. And then just the Rule 5 draft. It's been a busy last couple of hours, but the Red Sox, they lost a couple of guys in the Rule 5 draft. Specifically, we'll start with Shane Drohan, who was left unprotected. And the Chicago White Sox selected Shane 4th overall in the Rule 5 draft. Baseball America lists his transaction as chances to stick is good. Just your, I would say like your first thoughts. We both thought that Drohan was going to be selected. I thought he was actually going to go maybe a little bit earlier in the draft. You seem to think he's going to go back to the Red Sox too?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to get returned, and that's only because it's hard because we watched Drohan pitch in person in Worcester for the summer, and it was very eventful. He couldn't command a strike zone. He just was giving up hard hit ball after hard hit ball, and it was hard to see it happen after what he did in Portland to get to Worcester in the first place. So you could tell. I mean, there was a reason why he wasn't protected, and I think Breslow and everybody in the front office knows what they have in Shane Drohan, and they thought that either A, they could sneak him through the Rule 5 and possibly keep him that way, or B, he just wouldn't stick on a roster the entire season. He's going to get returned. So if there is a shot, though, to make it, it is in Chicago for the White Sox, who are obviously rebuilding. So it could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, the White Sox are definitely a team that they're not going to compete anytime soon, and they're kind of overhauling that operation. But no, to your point, though, and I've said this a few times, when Shane Drohan pitch, for me, it was, kind of like appointment viewing. I liked watching him pitch. I thought he had a lively arm. I mean, he still does. The wheels came off, and there was a massive drop between, first off, the talent at AA and AAA. There's a massive divide there. And, he tossed a 6.47 ERA, a 5.78 FIP, 89 innings, 19 starts. There was times where he looked really good. He would flash. There was a handful of starts. And then, though, there was other starts where you can't fall behind batters and think that your stuff is going to play and you're going to be able to go and blow guys away like you did in the lower levels. Guys at AAA are just too good. It's just not the same beast. I mean, we'll see. I do think he will end up being returned, but there's a lot that can be said for having a left-hander, and that can stick.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm leaning towards him getting returned just because I think what he did this past season, I never once saw a stretch in Worcester this past summer that was like, oh yeah, he's going to be helping out the big league team soon. I had never thought that. It seemed like it was just so few and far between of how well he could put together outings. So I just think that in the MLB, like it's not going to be a good sight. But at the same time, like you said, Chicago's not going to be contending anytime soon. It could be one of those things where it's like we saw with Thad Ward last year, where it's like, he's stuck with the Nationals. He gets hurt a little bit and he didn't really pitch that well, but they just stuck around because Washington wasn't really competing. So, like I said, either way for me, I do think he gets returned at the end of the day.
Yeah, just going back and looking at some of the game logs, he went most times, he'd go 5 or 6 innings, but 5 hits, 6 hits, 9 hits, 6 earned runs. There was a few times where there was flashes of brilliance against Scranton in August, 10 strikeouts. 3 hits, but then those appearances where he would flash like that would be followed up with, 3 innings, 3 2/3, 3 innings, giving up 20 hits over the course of 9 innings. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't able to put it truly together, and teams hit him very, very hard. Control was an issue. You can't walks. And that was a theme a lot too with the Red Sox at times this year. They would just walk way too many guys. And Drohan fell into that category as well. Just in the month of August alone, he walked 16 batters in 9 innings. And I get, I can see Red Sox fans having an issue with, here's, losing a prospect, not, protecting them, because the emphasis is on pitching. But there's a reason that this team didn't protect him, and I think that they just like the other options that's there. And the White Sox have an opportunity to maybe discover and uncover something rather, and maybe get him back on track, or he'll be back within the system.
Yeah, and I think to your point too is like, a lot of people are going to gravitate towards he's the 3rd highest ranked pitching prospect in the Red Sox system. So it's one of those things where people are just looking at that number and they're just being like, oh my gosh, like we're losing our 3rd best pitching prospect to the Rule 5 draft. But in reality, it just goes to show you that I think it's no secret that the past few drafts have been middle infielders or position players in the draft that are coming up. And, you obviously have a lot of good position player positions in the minor leagues for the top prospects. So it's like you only have 3 pitchers, I think, the top like 20 or 25 or something like that. I saw Sox prospects. So it's he is the 3rd highest rated, but would he be if there was other pitchers in the system? You never know. And to finish it off on Drohan, I think the walks per 9 is the thing that stuck out the most. I mean, he walked 63 guys in 89 innings in Worcester. 63 guys in 89. That was good for 6.37. That is the highest he's ever had in his career by over 2 walks per 9. So it's like he had some issues, and they were coming through in Worcester. So I mean, like I said, I think it gets returned in a day.
Yeah, and just to put the cherry on top of that, and then we'll move on. Craig Breslow and Andrew Bailey have both said it's about throwing strikes. And clearly, by looking at those numbers, Shane Drohan just it doesn't fall into the philosophy of what they're looking for. Again, it doesn't mean that he doesn't come back and they try to, kind of fix, what they might find to be, wrong with that command. But, there were even too, really, there was a few times, the tone of how he was talked about changed over the course of being in that clubhouse and talking to people around the team, of just, good kid, good stuff, good arm. And then it started to change. So we think he'll be back. Now, you think that this next, pitcher, Ryan Fernandez, will not be back, and the Cardinals are going to keep Fernandez. Let me tell you, I mean, he probably has some of the hardest stuff that anybody in the Red Sox system had, probably in this Rule 5 draft. The 4-seam heater that touches 97. And it's not, I mean, people are going to say, well, a lot of guys throw 97, Chris, like not a big deal. you mentioned on the To the Show We Go podcast a few times, Caleb Hamilton, one of the catchers, would just talk about how hard he literally threw. I'm a little surprised he was picked. And now that he's picked, and I'm going to go with what you're saying, I don't think he's come back.
I don't think he is. Especially since he's in a reliever role as well. It's not like Drohan where, he's going to be in a starting role for Chicago. So it's going to be, he's going to have to be a guy that gets the ball every 5 days, or he's going to have to come out of the, a long relief option. So with Fernandez, he's just going to be a 1-inning guy like he's been the entire time he's come up. And like you said, I mean, his fastball, he actually was touching 100 miles per hour for a start. I interviewed him after he had hit 100 in an outing in Worcester towards the end of the year. And he was like, that was the hardest pitch I threw all year. And it hit 100 on the stadium gun. Don't know how accurate it was. Might have been a little biased for a home stadium gun, but whatever. Still hitting high 90s. I mean, the guy strikes people out a ton. He averaged over 10 K per nine while in that short stint in Worcester. He was over 11 in Portland. He had over, I think it was like a insane, like 11 when he was in Portland the year before. So it's like the guy missing bats at like an elite level. His walks are also like way down. Like he'd only walked 10 guys in the 30 innings there in Worcester as well. So I was kind of surprised about that, because usually when you have some gas like he has, you're expecting, okay, maybe he walks a ton of guys, kind of like what we saw with Brian Mata. Like he throws really hard, but he walks a ton of guys. Well, Fernandez wasn't doing that either. It's just that he got hit really freaking hard when he got hit. He gave up 7 home runs in 26 games in relief in Worcester when he got called up. So maybe that might have been a little inclination from the Red Sox being like, I didn't think he was an option to get protected, first of all, but I knew he was like one of those guys you kept hearing, but I don't think he's coming back. I think the Cardinals are happy to get a guy who can throw 99, 98 miles per hour out of their bullpen. And they had Jordan Hicks up until last year that did that. So maybe they see Ryan Fernandez as a new Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, I was actually just going to use that as a comp. It just seems to fall in line with, arms that the Cardinals have had where they throw gas like that. Yeah, I mean, his stuff is great. It's just, to your point, I mean, even just looking at the under the hood, from the Red Sox numbers, I mean, the 10 walks and, the 6+ ERA. I don't know, he's got a medical history too that could have scared some teams off. But he's got, that's that fastball that's so impressive, and just to kind of watch that. But he's got the cutter, he's got the slider, he's got some other pitches that I think that he can play off very well. The strikeout rate, the 25%, strikeout rate at AAA, that's a really solid number. But it's a good pick. It's a good pick. Baseball America has him as a moderate chance to stick. But to your point, getting to see him, maybe getting him in a new organization. Cardinals have always done a really good job with developing pitching and finding ways to get more out of their arms. Who knows? But he could be a really sneaky addition to that Cardinals bullpen. I think it's a good pick. It's a really good pick. And it's a good situation too for him.
Yeah, and I think his cutter, by the way, is, his fastball gets all the talk, but his cutter was the put-away pitch that he had.
Plus, it's definitely a plus offering pitch.
Yeah, so it's I remember watching it live and just seeing, obviously when the fastball comes in, that's the wow pitch, but the cutter, it seemed like every single time was a swing and miss pitch. It's like, so he had a good secondary pitch. And obviously, like you said, hearing Caleb Hamilton, like, just single him out, being like, that guy is, when he's on, he's on. Obviously, like I said, he got hit really hard too, though. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to go very well with the Cardinals, especially in like spring training, or it's going to go really bad. I don't think there's any in between. Like, I think he's either going to be, he might be giving up 6-7 home runs in the first month, or he could be the exact opposite. So I think it's going to be interesting on him. I think for sure he's sticking just because where the Cardinals are at right now. And he reminds me a lot, too, of how hard their closer, Ryan Helsley, throws, too. So,
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to bring him up just like as we were talking about Hicks and then 100%. And it falls under that umbrella of just really what that team, I mean, we don't cover the Cardinals, so we don't really have the deep dive of, what their focus is. But if you take a look at it from a step back and you start naming off some of these guys, there are similarities, and you understand as to why they went out and they got a guy like Fernandez. Would have loved to have seen what it'd be like in that Breslow lab that we're now hearing so much about. And again, you could. That's the beauty of the Rule 5 draft. They can return back to the Red Sox, very similar to Noah Song. But the next guy we're going to chat about really quick is the Rangers left right-handed pitcher Justin Slayton unprotected. The New York Mets picked him 8th overall and then traded him to the Red Sox for Clemson, who was drafted out of Clemson, left-hander Ryan Ammons. So, first off, my thing would be is if Slayton was available, I bet you the Red Sox would have taken him. 100%. Like that's a no-brainer at this point. Clearly, somebody the Red Sox valued. Baseball America lists him as one of the buzziest names leading up to the draft. Straightened out his strike throwing in 2023, cut his walk rate down from 19.5 down to 8.5. So again, that throw strikes control was there. He went to the AFL. Interesting move, and he's going to get to compete to be out of the Sox bullpen.
Yeah, and I think I did see something from one of the beat writers, Sherman or somebody out there. Don't quote me on who it was, but I think they had said that the Mets or the Red Sox were planning on taking him with their pick, and the Mets just happened to pick right in front of them. So I think he's super intriguing. He just finished up. He didn't have like a great showing in the Arizona Fall League. I think he only had 3 outings. So it's not like it was a big sample size there, but yeah, that's a guy that, between AA and AAA last year, he had a 2.87 ERA, and he's got a fastball that goes upper 90s. I think his max was 98. So that's right in line with what we're all hearing about what Breslow's looking for, is a guy that can throw hard, and he's got 4-pitch mix. So it's it's going to be another power arm that is going to fight for innings in the, he's got to make the Red Sox, because it all applies to the Rule 5 options for him. So he's got to be there.
If you think about too, just some of the arms that they've added, even if you walk away from this Rule 5 draft really quick and you look at the trade the Red Sox made with the Yankees, sending Verdugo there and getting the players they got back. When we talked to Chad Tracy, again, check out that podcast. We talked about Weissert, and just he kind of referred to him as nasty on the mound. He had just that nasty, just mentality of just dude that throws hard. The Red Sox have added a bunch of players that can go in this relief role, can do these bulk inning, type roles. And again, we don't know what Slayton's going to be, but this is someone that could project into that, which opens the door for when you want to talk about guys like a Josh Winkowski to come out of the bullpen and get an opportunity to compete in the rotation. You're adding arms that are all very similar that can do the same thing. So you're giving yourself that flexibility to see what you truly have with some of these other arms within your system, because that's how you develop pitching as well. You have to see what you have out of these guys to know, what they're truly going to be. It infuriates me to think about, hey, we're not going to give a guy like Josh Winkowski an opportunity to go ahead and potentially start because of, Garrett Whitlock and Tanner Houck. Those are all independent of each other. And, Whitlock, he was hurt. That's a different conversation. Tanner Houck, he gets hit hard after seeing an order. What was it, the third time around? Teams are hitting 400 against him. Those are all just specific to those players. Winkowski came in, he got his head kicked in as a rookie, was put in a really tough situation because they had no depth, but then he was lethal last season. And I keep him where he's at, but when you're adding all these other guys that all look similar and do the same thing, it gives you the opportunity to see what you have and flex out guys and start you start to spread out how you can use these resources. So I like these moves. I do. I like these moves. But the Red Sox sports do.
I mean, think about it. Think about what was the biggest takeaway from the 2023 season on where they fell short. There was quite a few things, but one of the things was, I think, pitching depth. I think that's something in the high minors especially that they were lacking. They didn't really have any guys that they could turn to from Worcester and be like, okay, if we have an injury, like Chris Martin gets injured or Kenley Jansen goes on the COVID list or whatever happened throughout the year. And it's like, okay, like who comes up and takes this place that you can really trust? You had a lot of weird names kind of circa like 2020, but that was a little worse. But I don't know. I just think that the depth that you had, that you didn't have a guy like Weiser, you didn't have a guy even similar to like a Winkowski. I don't know. It's just it's going to be something that I think they're starting to change a little bit, where it's like they're really focusing on the pitching side of things. Obviously, you have a former pitcher running the show, so I think he may be emphasizing it a little more, which is fine with me because I think pitching obviously gets you further than anything else. And last year we had bad defense and not great starting pitching. We didn't have anybody to make it to the sixth inning, like ever. So I like these moves. And I think guys like Slayton, Weiser, all I hear from Weiser about Weiser, by the way, is how nasty he was in Scranton. And I know he got called up to the Yankees a little bit and it didn't go as well, but like it was just his first stint. So like you can't judge that off of that. But all you hear about is how nasty he was in Scranton. So I'm excited about all the new pitchers they've gotten.
And it's to your point, it's depth. And the Red Sox, you know, they have young arms, but they're in the lower level. They're at that single, that low A, that high A, that might be kind of kicking around at Portland. That's, you know, like Gambrel, who ultimately got called up to Worcester. You know, he wasn't ready to make that jump. You know what I mean? Van Bell, he's not ready to make that jump. Truly, Drohan was not ready to make that jump. I can't remember how many countless of people that were just like, oh, we need to call up Drohan when guys are down. Even Lou Merloni was throwing it out there on Twitter. We'll call up Drohan. I mean, he wasn't ready. You know what I mean? That was a massive opportunity for Boston. And it looks like they're trying to right that ship and, you know, get a lot of these young arms. And it is interesting. It's a different perspective of where, you know, under Chaim Bloom, it's rebuild the the minor leagues, which they've done that for the most part. But Tampa was always known for just finding these arms and just cranking out these arms. And that never really happened in Boston. He never like that never happened as much. They found the Whitlock and the Rule 5 and, you know, Bernardino, but to the level of what the Rays were doing it at, and even during Bloom's time, you know what I mean? It's not apples to apples here. To where now it's Breslow, it's pitching. They have a lot of good young position players. They have a lot of different areas they can move from and get more pitching. Because who knows, if you hit on a lot of these guys, again, now you can go and take chances in free agency and be a little more aggressive and allocate money here or there because, you know, you have lesser funds tied into guys who are controlled.
Yeah, and I think as well, just to, you know, you kind of back up that point that you had on, you know, you have all these position players now, and I think that was evident with the Verdugo trade, obviously, is, you know, you're trading from a spot where you have bodies that are MLB ready, aka like the Jaron Durans and the Willie Abreu's. Like, you weren't sending those guys down to AAA next year. You just weren't. So, you know, you kind of have a plethora of options there. And then obviously you have like the Roman Anthony's and even a guy like Corey Rozier, like in the wings down in AAA. I know Rozier's not a top prospect, but you still have guys that can come up once they're ready. And so it's like, where do you not have that? The pitching side of things. So I don't hate it. I think that they needed it desperately. I think Fitz comes in like the top 15 prospects now. I think he like literally swapped out for Drohan in the top 15 prospects. So I don't know, man. I think the organization's in a lot better spot, obviously, that when Bloom left it with a ton of talent down in the minors. It just was a little deeper in the minors, but yeah, I'm in love with these pitching acquisitions so far. I mean, everything I've seen from the Yankees guys to even a guy like Isaiah Campbell that really is getting foreshadowed now because that had seemed like it happened like 2 months ago, but
yeah, this is forever ago.
Yeah, so I like it. I mean, the only other guy from the Rule 5 that I'll give an honorable mention to is Ryan Miller, who was a minor league Rule 5 pick last year by the Red Sox. They took him from the Yankees organization. He actually had like a pretty decent season in Portland. Like, it wasn't anything, though, to write home about. Like, it wasn't like one of those seasons where you're like, oh, wow, like he was pretty solid. And we had a player from Portland, actually, in my good pal Ed Hand had asked Grant I can't remember actually who it was from Portland, but he had asked, I think it may have been Ryan Zefferjon. I don't know who it was, but somebody actually mentioned that one pitch they would like was the sweeper from Ryan Miller, that it was nasty. So shout out to him for that. But yeah, I mean, that's just an honorable mention. It's obviously not a guy that was going to contribute to the major league side anytime soon, but still just a good depth bullpen guy that did pretty well in Portland and could have been fighting for a spot in Worcester, even though I don't think he would have had it. But
yeah, it's I don't really have any other honorable mentions. The other guys, I mean, I don't want to take away, and nor do I want to go and like, babble and insult people, who's listening, to be like, to pretend that, you have a full scouting report of those other players. So it happens, you know what I mean? I think at the end of the day, with the way that baseball is being covered, especially in this market, there's more people emphasizing different areas of the team, minor league, et cetera. It's just going to seem, you're going to just get more content on that. I would go and say, check out Sox Prospects to get a deeper dive on some, or even Baseball America too, on some of those other players that have moved on to other organizations, to get a feel of who they might be and if you want to react in either direction. But overall, though, we didn't even touch upon the catcher that the Red Sox selected.
Oh, yeah. I mean, New Hampshire's finest. I mean, also the name. I feel like the name alone, Mickey Gasper, like that's just that sounds like he played for the New York Yankees in like 1910. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of cool. He's from Merrimack, New Hampshire, so he's a local guy. So obviously people love that. And a little tidbit that I saw earlier was he was the primary catcher in Somerset this past year, which is the Yankees AA. And he caught newly acquired Richard Fitz every single start that Fitz had. He had Gasper as his catcher. So there's already a familiarity there between those two. I don't know if it's going to line up between where Fitz lands and where Gasper goes, just because of I feel like there's pretty big name catcher in Portland right now. So I know that Mickey Gasper isn't going to take any playing time or any thought into blocking a guy who was the first round pick last year, Kyle Teal. So it is going to be interesting. Maybe Fitz lines up in the Worcester rotation after pitching pretty well last year in AA, and maybe Gasper takes the backup catcher role to Steven Scott in Worcester. So that is a little, the familiarity is definitely a plus thing for a catcher and pitcher. So I wouldn't put that completely to the side.
No. And it's, that was their only addition, was that, minus the trade with the Mets to get the dude from the Rangers. So that's really it. That is our quick little 30-minute recap on the Rule 5 draft. Check out beyondthemonster.substack.com. Get all of the latest articles and content that drops daily. Give your email address and you'll get an automatic update when those drop. And head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and check out all of the episodes from To The Show We Go. A ton of content there. Christopher Troy was the latest. You can also go back, check out the Roman Anthony, Nazan Zanatello, and much, much more. So for Andrew, I'm Chris. We'll see you guys very soon.